Greetings, my friend. You are interested in the unknown.
So, when you get in there and fight with him, shake his legs around. It looks like he's killing you. Okay.
And now, for the first time, we are bringing you the full story of what happened.
People turning south from the freeway were startled when they saw 3 flying saucers high over Hollywood Boulevard.
Can your heart stand the shocking facts of the true story of Edward D. Wood, Jr.?
My gosh, Bella, how do you do that?
You must be double-jointed. And you must be young, Aryan.
For this retrospective, I will talk about the life of Edward D. Wood Jr., mainly focusing on his most well-known film, Plan 9 from Outer Space. I will also be talking about the 1994 autobiographical film Ed Wood by Tim Burton. Edward Davis Wood Jr. was born October 10, 1924. According to Wood's second wife, Kathy O'Hara, Wood's mother Lillian would dress him up in girls' clothing when he was a child because she had always wanted a daughter. For the rest of his life, Wood privately dressed in women's clothing.
I don't think he ever did tell me why.
Not unlike other children of the era, Ed would enjoy watching westerns and anything involving the occult. After serving in the Marines, Wood moved to Hollywood, California, where he wrote scripts and directed television pilots, commercials, and several forgotten micro-budget westerns, most of which failed to sell.
He was going to be another Orson Welles.
Eddie idolized Orson Welles. You're kidding. My God, I can't believe that. He wanted to be Orson Welles? Well, a good chance. My God.
In 1952, Wood was introduced to over-the-hill actor Bela Lugosi by a friend. At 69, Lugosi had become dependent on morphine as a way of controlling his debilitating sciatica over the years, and was in poor physical and mental health state. During the time they knew each other, Wood helped Lugosi through the worst days of his clinical depression and drug addiction.
Eddie, I want to thank you. These last few days have been a good time.
In 1953, Wood wrote and directed the semi-biographical film Glen or Glenda, in which a troubled cross-dresser reveals his shameful secret to an unsuspecting fiancée. This was the first of Wood's films in which to star Bela Lugosi.
Beware of the big green dragon. He eats little boys.
In 1955, Lugosi would be given the leading role as a mad scientist in Bride of the Monster, in which a mad doctor attempts to create atomic supermen.
Lobo!
Soon after the film was completed, Bela Lugosi committed himself to the Norwalk State Hospital for 3 months to be treated for morphine addiction.
Completely cured, and I think it was a very heroic effort to do that because he took a lot of heat from it. I'm very proud of how he was able to take control of his life and lick a problem that he had.
A new man, new lease of life. I'm cured. I feel like $1 million.
Plan 9 from Outer Space is a 1957 independently made American black and white science fiction horror film produced, written, directed and edited by Edward D. Wood Jr. Science fiction remained popular through the 1950s, though the genre had experienced significant changes in the post-war period. The atomic age, heralded by the development of nuclear weapons, had inspired science fiction films to deal with the dangers of unrestricted science, while space flight and the existence of extraterrestrial life seemed to hold a new fascination for audiences at the beginning of the space race. Plan 9's script seems to aim at being an epic science fiction horror, a genre typically requiring a big budget from a major film studio. Though much with all of Wood's movies, his ideas tended to be too expensive to film, yet Wood tried to film them anyway.
Eddie sometimes he was so serious in what he wrote, but it didn't come out that way in the movie.
Why is it so important that you want to contact the governments of our Earth? Because all you of Earth are idiots.
UFO government cover-up conspiracies of the day feature in the plot, along with a cautionary message from the alien invaders. The idea was that humanity's self-destructive behaviour was the real threat, not any external source of danger, which was also frequently used in science fiction films of the time. Our story begins in California, where an old man grieving the loss of his wife is killed in a traffic accident.
The old man left that home, never to return again.
When the population of Hollywood and Washington DC sees flying saucers in the sky, a colonel, a police lieutenant, a commercial pilot, his wife are Earth's only hope.
This is the most fantastic story I've ever heard.
And every word of it's true, too.
That's the fantastic part of it.
Marla Nurmi was cast to play a recently deceased woman brought back to life through UFO interference. For the role, she appeared as a vampire character and was paid a fee of $200.
It was a birthday party for Bela Lugosi Jr. It was his 16th birthday, and there I met Mr. Edward D. Wood Jr. He didn't actually ask me at that time if I would work for him, and I thought, this is a pathetic buffoon. He's a man who doesn't even know his own shortcomings. Kind of sad. Pretty, but ineffectual.
She recalled insisting that her part be silent, as she did not like the dialogue that Wood had written for her. Bela Lugosi had died of a heart attack at this point, but Wood used footage that shot together and also used a replacement for Lugosi throughout the film. The actor would cover his face in a Dracula-like stance in order for audiences not to recognize him. Swedish wrestler Tor Johnson played Daniel Clay, an inspector turned zombie.
Minutes later, the police, led by Inspector Daniel Clay, arrived at the scene.
You get their statement, have one of the boys take the guy and the girl back to town. You take charge.
Okay, Inspector.
Gregory Walcott plays the leading role of a pilot by the name of Jeff Trent. Walcott had an admiration for Wood's tenacity in his projects, still he had some bad opinions of Plan 9. He commented years later, "Ed had a poor taste and was undisciplined. If he had $10 million, Plan 9 would still have been a piece of tasteless shit. I liked Ed Wood, but I could discern no genius there. His main concern was making his next film. It looked like they shot the thing in a kitchen. Worst film of all time. 30 years later, it's coming back to haunt me."
You see? You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid! That's all I'm taking from you. Get back here, you jerk!
Dudley Manloff co-starred as the space captain Eros.
No! Stop him, Dennis! I can't get it, it's jammed! Stop him, you fool!
J. Edwards Reynolds was the leader of the South Baptist Convention in Beverly Hills, California, and Hugh Thomas was one of his associates from the church. Both played gravediggers, while Reynolds was also the executive producer of the film.
Did you hear anything?
I thought it did.
Don't like hearing noises, especially when there ain't supposed to be any. Maybe we're getting old.
The majority of Plan 9 was shot in Quality Studios, Hollywood. Footage of Los Angeles is used to ground the otherworldly events to a realistic setting. As a resident, Wood was likely familiar with all the shooting locations. The scene when the military fires at the flying saucers is actual military stock footage. The film was originally titled Grave Robbers from Outer Space, but was later changed to Plan 9 from Outer Space. The original title is still mentioned, however, at the end of Criswell's opening narration.
Grave Robbers from Outer Space.
For the music score, stock recordings of works by about a dozen composers was used, which was a fairly common procedure in the 1950s for scoring low-budget films and television programs. The iconic flying saucers in the film have been variously identified as paper plates or hubcaps. However, according to the documentary Flying Saucers Over Hollywood, they were actually a recognisable plastic model kit, first issued in 1952 by toy manufacturer Paul Lindbergh through his Lindbergh Line Model Company kit.
Saucers seen over Hollywood.
Harry Thomas, the man's makeup man, was incensed when Wood refused to follow his suggestions regarding the appearance of the aliens in the film. Wood told him they didn't have enough time for Thomas's suggestions, which led to the makeup man withdrawing his name from the film's final credits. During the first aircraft cockpit scene, the first officer is visibly reading from a script in his lap, and a flash of light from a flying saucer reveals the boom microphone's shadow. The scene in the beginning, which Bella picks a rose outside his character's house, was filmed outside of Tor Johnson's home. Plan 9 was released twice, first on March 15th, 1957 at the Carlton Theatre in Los Angeles under the title Grave Robbers from Outer Space, then on July 22nd, 1959 through Valiant Pictures, now retitled Plan 9 from Outer Space. Reviews at the time were abysmal. The film quickly gained notoriety because of its multiple continuity problems.
And cut, print. We're moving on. That was perfect.
Perfect. Mr. Wood, do you know anything about the art of film production?
Well, I like to think so.
That cardboard headstone tipped over. This graveyard is obviously phony.
Nobody will ever notice that. Filmmaking is not about the tiny details. It's about the big picture.
Then how about when the policeman arrived in daylight, but now it's suddenly night?
What do you know? Haven't you heard of suspension of disbelief?
By 1959, Ed Wood's financial backers had completely given up all hope of seeing a return on their investment. By the early 60s, Wood was unable to raise money to finance his own projects, so attempted to make money as a screenwriter to little success. The following years saw Wood fall deeper into alcoholism.
Eddie was my friend. So he was a nice guy. But the booze killed him.
He moved into an apartment with his second wife, Kathy O'Hara, and any income he would receive would be spent on alcohol at the local liquor store.
Nobody gave a darn about Eddie, you know, when he was alive, and even less when he died.
Friends have stated in his final years he eventually stopped bathing, and that his apartment was so unkept that eventually he would not allow any friends to come over and visit anymore, because Wood was aware that they would be horrified to see how dirty and decrepit his place had become.
Booze bloated his face and fogged his mind. He regaled friends with grand plans for new films.
Paul Marco said Wood was constantly moaning, "My God, I've given everything away. I should be a millionaire. I should have $1 million right now."
The few dollars for the script were gone fast. Ed's drinking made him unreliable.
Ed Wood and Kathy Wood were constantly being evicted for non-payment of rent. Each time they moved, Ed would immediately establish credit with the local liquor store nearest his new address. Their last apartment was in a violent ghetto area.
Ed could tell himself he was earning a living in the movie business, but he drank his income as soon as he earned it.
By 1972, Wood's depression had worsened, and he and his wife Kathy had both become alcoholics. They were evicted from their cheap Hollywood apartment on Euchre Street on Thursday, December 7th, 1978 for failure to pay rent. Ed had kept all of his Plan 9 memorabilia in the apartment, though the landlord threw it all into the garbage can outside.
Broke, beaten by rejection and ill from alcohol, Ed was evicted from his shabby apartment. It was a week before Christmas.
I have no home, abandoned, living like an animal, that I will show the world that I can be its master.
On December 10th, 1978, Wood died of a heart attack in bed after falling ill. His wife Kathy had found him. She later stated, "He was dead. His eyes and mouth were open. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. He looked like he'd seen hell."
Everyone who met him liked Eddie Wood. His energy was infectious. He gathered around him a veritable United Nations of friends who helped bring his quirky vision to life.
Following his death, Ed gained a cult following and a new legion of fans. In 1986, an essay paying homage to Wood in Incredibly Strange Films, Jim Morton wrote, "Eccentric and individualistic, Edward D. Wood Jr. was a man born to film. Lesser men, if forced to make movies under these conditions, would have thrown up their hands in defeat." So popular by the 90s, a major motion picture was written about Ed's life. In 1992, after reading Rudolph Gray's Nightmare of Ecstasy, Tim Burton developed a fascination with Ed Wood. He was taken by how he, in Tim Burton's words, wrote about all his films as if he was making Citizen Kane, you know, whereas other people perceived them as the worst movies ever. The idea of making a film of Wood's life appealed to Burton. Mainly the appeal was that Burton could make a film that was character driven rather than style driven. The budget of Ed Wood was more than 100 times greater than every Edward D. Wood Jr. budget combined. Because of his eccentric habits and bafflingly strange films, director Edward D. Wood Jr. is a Hollywood outcast.
Orson Welles was only 26 when he made Citizen Kane. I'm already 30.
Nevertheless, with the help of formerly famous Bela Lugosi and a devoted cast and crew of show business misfits who believed in Ed's off-kilter vision, the filmmaker is able to bring his oversized dreams into cinematic life.
That is great. Let's do a take, okay?
Despite a lack of critical or commercial success, Ed and his friends managed to create an oddly endearing series of extremely low-budget films. On April 1993, shooting for Ed Wood began. Burton's first decision was to shoot the film in black and white, stating this was a movie that had to be in black and white. The decision sparked interest from Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures and 20th Century Fox in optioning the film's rights, but Burton accepted an offer from Walt Disney Studios, who had previously produced The Nightmare Before Christmas. Scott Alexandra and Larry Karaszewski wrote the screenplay in 6 weeks. With a budget of $18 million, Disney did not feel the film was that much of a risk and granted Burton total creative autonomy, something the real Ed Wood struggled with.
I'm here.
Who is he?
This is our choir director. He's going to play the young hero.
Are you people insane? I'm the director. I make the casting decisions around here.
I thought this was a group effort.
No!
The movie was filmed at various locations in and around the Los Angeles area. When describing the film's accuracy, Burton explained, "It's not a completely hardcore realistic biopic. In doing a biopic you can't help but get inside the person's spirit a little bit. So for me, some of the film is trying to be through Ed a little bit. So it's got an overly optimistic quality to it." According to Lugosi's son, the film's portrayal of Lugosi is inaccurate. In real life, he never used profanity, owned small dogs, or slept in coffins.
Bella, I want to thank you again for last night.
It's fine, Eddie. All in the line of duty.
No, I want you to know how much I appreciate all you've done for me. A great man like yourself shouldn't have to be wandering through the muck at 4 a.m.
Well, there are not a lot of fellas I do it for.
One day, Kathy Wood, Edward D. Wood Jr.'s wife, visited the set and asked to meet Johnny Depp. That day they were filming a scene where Ed Wood would look really messed up, which made Burton nervous for what Kathy would think of the movie. When Depp exited his trailer, she said, "That's my Eddie." Edward D. Wood Jr.'s ex-wife Dolores Fuller criticised the film because it did not portray him as an alcoholic, the reason she supposedly divorced him. In a deleted scene, Wood is asleep in a bed and an empty bottle of booze is lying next to him. Ed Wood had its limited release on September 30th, 1994. It went into wide release on October 7th, 1994, just 3 days before what would have been Edward D. Wood Jr.'s 70th birthday.
I just want to say that this film is for Bella.
Though the actual films of Ed Wood never did receive positive reviews, ironically the story of Ed Wood's life received outstanding reviews.
That's Johnny Depp as Ed Wood, who stopped at nothing to create some of the worst, most laughable pictures of all time. Ed Wood, directed by the always inventive Tim Burton, is simply marvelous. It's in love with filmmaking and the directing impulse. I really like this picture. It should be required viewing in every film school in America. And why? Because it's about a guy who loves his work despite all the roadblocks put in front of him. And this movie called Ed Wood is a tribute to creative passion and also to friendship. Congratulations all the way around on this picture. It's one of the year's very best.
I share your delight. I also enjoyed every moment of this movie. You know,
had Ed lived, he would surely have received the success that always eluded him, financially and critically.
Could you run it again?